In Fire and Blood, Nettles is a peasant girl who somehow tames a dragon. Unlike the other dragon seeds, she doesn't have any confirmed and clear Valyrian ancestry, doesn't have silver hair or purple eyes, which makes her a very notable character because on a basic narrative level, her existence is meant to question this construct of Targaryen power. Fans have a tendency to get mired in theory with this one that, okay, she doesn't look Valyrian, but neither does Jon Snow, so she could have some Valyrian blood in her after all. To which I'll say, when you get really fixated on blood, even fictional magical blood, you start sounding like a fascist. A Song of Ice and Fire does actually make use of that fantasy trope of magical bloodlines. The Targaryens are all heavily implied to have actual dragon DNA. And the Starks obviously have inherited magical skin changing and green seeing powers. But, and this is a very important bit, George has also tried to complicate that narrative by heavily implying that this is because their Targaryen and Stark ancestors artificially introduced these magical traits into their family line. The Valyrians are said to have practiced human-animal experimentation to be able to better control their dragons. This is the source of the Targaryens' magical dragon DNA. Nettles is something of a hint from George that magical dragon DNA is not necessary to bond with a dragon. The Valyrians used to be sheep herders before they had their empire. Nettles tames her dragon by feeding it sheep each day. Dragons are of course animals at the end of the day, and what she does is manage to slowly gain this animal's trust. Ergo, this is how the first Valyrians tamed the wild dragons. The Valyrians originally being shepherds is also quite interesting because the shepherd is a figure of protection and guidance. In the Bible, it is metaphorically used to symbolize God's care for his people. Now, the Valyrians will go on to found the Valyrian Freehold, the most prolific slave empire in the history of the world of Ice and Fire. They've just gone from figures of protection to figures of control. And this is reflected in their bond with the dragons. They're no longer animals with whom you build a mutual bond of trust. They're meant to be completely controlled. Now, hundreds of years later, to the Targaryens, dragons are basically inheritable property, the way castles and lordships are for the rest of the nobility. And just as the nobles only ever marry among themselves to preserve class boundaries, the Targaryens have always made sure to keep this inheritance within their family line. Which naturally leads to the construction of this myth that only a Targaryen can ride a dragon. This is why Nettles is such an important character, because if a common-born black girl can become a dragon rider, then Westeros' entire social hierarchy of the nobles at the top and the small folk at the bottom is built on a lie. There's nothing natural about these class and racial divisions. It is all socially constructed. It is also important that she and her dragon get to survive the dance, while House Targaryen causes the death of their own dragons in a war of control for the Iron Throne. Nettles is a reminder that dragons were never meant to be simply instruments of power. This is, of course, entirely lost if you give the storyline to Daemon Targaryen's highborn daughter. I'm not a book purist. I don't actually mind certain deviations from the source material as long as you can preserve the themes of the work. But this is one of those changes where you absolutely cannot preserve the themes of this work. Ryan, in a recent interview with IGN, has said that the decision was made because they didn't want to do an infidelity storyline with Daemon at this point of time in the show. I get that, but I think they've made a mistake by narrowing down on the daughter versus lover angle of it, because that's not really what Nettles and Daemon's story is about. Daemon is a second son who was brought up from birth to serve his family dynasty. He's a second son who's known his whole life that he'll never be king. He's only destined to serve kings. He performs this service by killing people. He's a knight, and as we all know, knighthood in Westeros is institutionalized violence. And Daemon has served, faithfully. I won't get much into this right now, but Daemon is frequently talked about as the schemer when he's actually loyal to a fault. This is shown in a great scene in season 1. Viserys, who has believed for years that Daemon seeks to usurp his brother's throne, is helped up the stairs to the Iron Throne by Daemon. Daemon holds the crown exactly twice during the show, and both times he puts it over the heads of other people that he loves. He has committed atrocities in the name of the crown. He has killed thousands to put Rhaenyra on his brother's throne. He will kill thousands to ensure she keeps sitting on his brother's throne. What happens when a person like this meets someone whose very existence calls into question all these rules he's followed his entire life? Because if Nettles is real, then it means all that violence he's committed to maintain his family's power is all a bit meaningless. Nettles is meant to give Daemon Targaryen an existential crisis. Like, what was all this for? What does his life actually amount to? And you can tell he's moved a great deal by her because when Rhaenyra orders the death of this peasant girl, there's nobody who by all rights a prince should feel no responsibility for. Daemon refuses to obey his Targaryen monarch. At least for a moment there, he's going against everything he was raised to embody. But it only lasts for a moment because immediately after, Daemon goes and does what his Targaryen monarch originally ordered him to do: take out Rhaegar and a rider. He saves Nettles, but he still dies for Rhaenyra. The Dance of the Dragons is a tragedy, which is why there is no exit from the cycle of violence. Daemon can finally see that the whole Game of Thrones is something of a farce, but he still has to die doing what he was raised to do. This is why they've made a mistake by worrying too much about the nature of the relationship, because it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that a prince of the realm died because he valued a peasant girl's life over his own. This is clearly meant to be the single redeeming moment of Daemon's life, but there is no way this works with his actual daughter. Dying for your daughter you've ignored your entire life is sweet, I guess, but it's not even in the same ballpark as what's happening in the book. Besides, I think they could have actually adapted the infidelity plot without making Daemon actually cheat on Rhaenyra. In Fire and Blood, it is said that Nettles has put Daemon under a spell and that she's rumored to be carrying Daemon's child. But you know what? There is another character in the Riverlands at that point in time, genuinely carrying a Targaryen prince's child. And she is rumored to be a witch. The flow of reliable information breaking down during wartime is a thing in the main series, so it is very easy for a rumor about Alys and Aemond in the Riverlands to turn into one about Daemon and Nettles by the time it reaches King's Landing. Fire and Blood is kind of all about how the truth gets warped, so I feel like this is a pretty convincing read of what could have happened with Nettles and Daemon. This doesn't necessarily mean their relationship was not inappropriate in any way, but it could explain why he was so upset at Rhaenyra's accusation. They could have done this in the show. They could still very easily do this in the show right now, because they have given Daemon copious amounts of screen time with Alys Rivers. They also have great chemistry, which leaves the nature of their relationship a bit ambiguous. He certainly cares about her. They confirmed this in episode 3 of season 3, where Daemon is visibly upset at the news of Aemond taking Harrenhal and killing all members of House Strong.
There was a woman there, a maester of sorts.
He's actually worried about her. Daemon Targaryen worried about a common servant girl. It is almost funny how Rhaena does not have anything in common with Nettles except for the storyline that's being forced on her, versus how similar Alys and Daemon's relationship is to the one he shares with Nettles in Fire and Blood. I can't think of a single good reason for why they chose to write these two like this, unless the goal here is to make Daemon Targaryen die for Alys Rivers instead. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? She once killed a man for him. Does he not owe her something in return? He already denies her a reward for her services to the crown at the start of season 3. This feels like something they would want to come back to. Alys wants to rule independently over Harrenhal, and once Aemond dies in Fire and Blood, she does in fact get to rule the castle alone. I don't know if they're going to go for this. So far it looks like they're going to have Rhaenyra put a hit out on her stepdaughter because she's angry about Jace's death. She should be angry about her boy, yes. She should be channeling that anger into torturing traitors and killing Hightowers. But as usual, she's not doing any of that. And all of a sudden she's going to do what? Have her stepdaughter killed. There's a bit of an insane leap, isn't it? This is not what I meant when I said I need Rhaenyra Targaryen to exercise political violence. This makes her look hysterical. When she puts that hit out on Nettles in Fire and Blood, she's reached her limit. She's just been betrayed by all her remaining dragon seeds and is paranoid about losing Daemon to another dragon seed. Once again, remotely not the same situation. There are a lot of changes in House of the Dragon that I'm willing to defend. This is not one of them because, like I said, it just does not work. But also because I think it is clear that they have way too big of a cast and they're struggling to write for all of them. Many of these characters don't get any storylines of their own during the dance. Their stories are meant to occur after the war, which they obviously can't adapt. So the solution was to give Rhaena an original storyline. Except they didn't do that. Instead, they merged her with another character, all the while keeping all these high towers. I mean, what is Gwaine even supposed to do? Couldn't we have merged Ormond and Gwaine instead? And Hugin Ulf. That could have been one guy who wrote Wormathor. All these men kept joining the cast, but it was decided that the black girl was expendable. To be honest, this feels like something of a racist creative choice, because it's just not a good look, that you can't even be bothered to write for these three women.